Welcome back to IT Basics. This is lesson 51, and we're diving into the three flavors of cloud: IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. The whole lesson really comes down to one question: how much do you manage, and how much does the provider handle for you? Over the next few pieces, we'll walk through the famous pizza analogy, then look at each model with real products like EC2, Heroku, and Microsoft 365. So by the end, you'll know which one fits which workload. So here's the analogy that made cloud finally click for a lot of people. Albert Barron's pizza framework from 2014. Think of it as 4 ways to end up eating pizza. Making it from scratch at home is on-prem, where you buy everything and do everything. Take and bake, that frozen pizza you finish in your own oven. That's IaaS. The provider hands you the raw ingredients, but you still install the OS and run the app. Delivery is PaaS. They cook it, you just provide the table, meaning you upload your code and the platform handles the runtime. And dining out at a restaurant? That's SaaS. You just show up and use it, like Gmail or Microsoft 365. So let's zoom into that take and bake tier, IaaS, infrastructure as a service. The core unit here is the virtual machine, a software emulated computer where you pick the CPU count, the RAM, the disk, and the OS image, and it spins up in about 60 seconds, billed by the minute or hour. The big three in AWS EC2, Azure VMs, Google Compute Engine, all rent you these for roughly 4 cents an hour for a small box. But here's the catch. You still manage the OS, the runtime, the middleware, the app, the data, the backups, the security. Basically, 80% of the sysadmin job is still on you. That's why IaaS wins for lift and shift migrations, or teams that already have sysadmins, maximum flexibility, but maximum work. And this is the picture I want you to burn into memory. The same 8-layer stack across all 4 models, with amber for what you manage and blue for what the provider handles. On-prem, you own all 8 layers. With IaaS, the provider takes networking, servers, and virtualization. You drop to 5. With PaaS, they also take the OS, middleware, and runtime, leaving you just 2, your app and your data. And with SaaS, 0. The line literally moves up the stack as you hand off more responsibility. And every who's responsible question on the job answers itself from this one chart. Now let's zoom in on PaaS, because this is the sweet spot for most modern apps. The big names you'll hear are Heroku, the original, famous for its one-line git push Heroku main deploy, plus AWS Elastic Beanstalk, Azure App Service, Google App Engine, and the newer front-end focused players like Versal and Netlify. There's also a database-only flavor, managed services like AWS RDS, Azure SQL, and MongoDB Atlas, where the provider handles backups, patching, and replication, and you just connect with a string. Your job shrinks to code, data, and a bit of config, roughly 20% of the work IaaS would demand. The trade-off? Speed for flexibility. Great for web apps, APIs, and MVPs. Not so great when you need custom OS tuning or a runtime the provider doesn't support. And now we arrive at the top of the stack. SaaS, software as a service. This is the one you already use every day without thinking about it. Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Salesforce, Slack, Zoom. You just open a browser, log in, and the provider handles literally everything. Code, OS, hardware, scaling, security. Pricing is almost always per user, per month. And it adds up fast. A 100-person company easily burns 50 grand a month across 30 to 100 different SaaS tools. Your job shrinks to 4 things: user accounts, configuration, your data inside the app, and integrations. The catch? Vendor lock-in is real. Migrating off Salesforce or M365 sounds easy until you actually try it. All right, theory's done. Let's see if it sticks. 4 real tickets a Tier 1 tech actually fields in 2026. A manager wants a web app. Match the model to the team's size and skills. PaaS for small teams. SaaS if a tool already exists. An M365 mailbox issue is pure SaaS. You check service health, fix config in admin center, and escalate to Microsoft for anything deeper. A dev needs to deploy Python. PaaS like app service gets it live in 30 minutes. And migrating a legacy app? That's a lift and shift. IaaS, same OS, no rewrite. Match the abstraction to the job. And these three letters become reflex. Now that you've seen the models in action, let's lock in the vocabulary. These 12 terms show up everywhere. Architecture docs, vendor pitches, procurement meetings, so treat this as your cloud fluency cheat sheet. You already know the big three: IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. Add FaaS and serverless for event-driven code, DBaaS for managed databases, containers for lightweight packaging, and the three migration patterns, lift and shift, re-platform, re-architect, that describe how you move apps to the cloud. Memorize these and you'll follow any cloud conversation a senior engineer throws at you. With the vocabulary locked in, let's clear out the myths, because these 5 show up constantly and they lead to genuinely bad decisions. PaaS isn't automatically better than IaaS. It's more constrained. Serverless still runs on servers. You just don't see them. SaaS isn't always cheaper at scale. Basecamp saved $7 million moving off it. IaaS isn't free flexibility. It's maximum work. And cloud native is an architecture pattern, not a deployment target. Match the model to the workload, run the math, and don't confuse buzzwords with engineering. And that's lesson 51 in the bag. 3 service models locked in, the pizza analogy still holding up, and a clear sense of how much you manage versus how much the provider handles. Next up in lesson 52, we go from abstract models to our products. AWS, Azure, and GCP, their core services, how regions and availability zones work, pricing models, and how to actually read the docs for EC2, Azure VM, and Compute Engine. 3 cloud lessons and a capstone left in stage 7. See you there.